decide, I've been reading the same thing over and over, so I thought I would read something else. So, I think everyone here kind of knows the Conquering Venus story. Do I have to explain it too much? The main story is about Martin Page, who's a young writer who has come to Paris as a chaperone. He was invited by his friend who was a school teacher, who shouldn't have invited him to be a chaperone because while he's there he falls in love with one of the students, who is a young man named David, who is in the closet, has an alcohol problem. But one of the things that happens is that halfway through the story, they're caught up in the bombing of the Saint-Michel metro station in Paris, which really happened in the summer of 1995. So this is the chapter that talks about Martin and the older woman that he meets in Paris named Irene Leroux, who he has a strange connection to, and they go to the hospital looking for Diane and David, who were in the explosion, who were in the terrorist attack. And this actually takes place. So this chapter actually takes place in the Salpêtrière Hospital, which is the same hospital that Princess Diana died in, which is which I didn't, when I started writing this, I did not know that was going to happen, but it did. So this chapter is called Ghost in the Machine. The Salpêtrière Hospital was a sprawling complex of old and new buildings, but the emergency and casualty entrance could have been at any hospital. That day it was bustling with ambulances and television crews. Irene and Martin skirted the front entrance and followed two doctors who were tending to a bomb victim on a bloody gurney through the emergency entrance. Once inside, they were faced with a mass of people surrounding the information desk. Police were trying to control the hysterical crush. "We won't find out anything here," Irene said, and put her arm around Martin's shoulder and walked him toward a set of doors marked "No Admittance." "Keep walking. Pretend like you belong here." The doors were on a sensor and swung open as they approached. They slipped inside and saw a nurse's station at the end of the corridor. As they walked past rooms, they looked inside, hoping to catch a glimpse of David or Diane. Before the nurse's station was a long cross hall. They turned and looked in either direction. "Let's split up," Irene suggested. "If we get separated, let's meet in the waiting room where we came in." Martin agreed, and they headed off in separate directions down opposite hallways. The hospital was a labyrinth. Some parts were under reconstruction, and Martin's footsteps echoed on the tile floors. He turned off the main corridor, lost sight of Irene. Most of the rooms he passed were empty, or the doors were shut. He thought he could hear voices coming from different parts of the building, but he never met anyone. A drop of blood ran down his forehead and into his eye, making him wince. He used his ruined jacket sleeve to mop at the cut on his forehead, and it came away sticky with blood. A door was open on the left side of the hall. A shaft of weak light spilled into the corridor. Martin stopped at the room and caught his breath. Someone was standing at the window inside the room, silhouetted, their back turned to Martin. When the figure heard Martin, it turned slightly. "Pardon, wrong room," Martin said. "Who are you looking for?" It was a male voice, young. Martin strained his eyes to see inside the room. The boy was standing in profile. He wore some type of loose-fitting garment that could have been black or white. "A friend who was hurt in the explosion." "Is that what happened? Where was it?" "The Saint-Michel station." "It must have been time for Mass to begin. Were many killed?" "I don't know." Martin started to back away. "Sorry to bother you. I'll keep looking." The boy had turned and was staring out the window again. Martin waited for him to speak. It was a soft, soothing voice and somehow familiar. Martin realized that the boy was American or very fluent in English. "You're in the wrong ward," the boy said. "Which ward is this?" "Psychiatric." It should have meant nothing, but Martin felt a cold chill run through his body. The boy reached up and touched one of the bars on the window. He turned his head to look back at Martin, who was frozen in the doorway. Martin's tongue felt thick, like when they had given him tranquilizers in the hospital. Do you want... Do you want to know why I'm here, the boy asked. Martin struggled to find his voice. It's none of my business. I'll go. He made his feet move, turned away from the door, already knew what the boy was going to say. I shot myself. The boy turned, and in the weak light, Martin could see that half his head was covered in bandages. His face was still in shadows. Don't you want to know why? I don't even know who you are. But aren't you curious? Everyone is always curious. I don't. You're thinking it was because I was unhappy. That's the simple answer, the catch-all reason. It's what they'll print in the newspaper. Man commits suicide. Friends said he had been despondent, unhappy. Do you believe those are satisfactory reasons? He was now standing with his hands clasped behind his back, looking right at Martin. I don't know, Martin whispered. Or maybe it's not the whole story at all. The boy put a cigarette in his mouth. It appeared from behind his back, and Martin never saw him light it. As Martin watched, a plume of smoke drifted up past the window, but he could see no glow from the lit end. He braced himself against the doorway for support. If only it was as simple as being unhappy, the boy said. That's such a generic term. I read somewhere that people who talk about committing suicide never do. It's the ones who don't talk about it that you have to keep an eye on. And you usually catch them in the act, and it's an ugly scene. When I try again, no one will find me in time to save me. My preparation will be quiet and unassuming. He dropped the cigarette on the floor and crushed it out with his bare foot. It's like Anne Sexton said about her friendship with Sylvia Plath. We talked about death with burned-up intensity, both of us drawn to it like moths to an electric light bulb, sucking on it. You'll get help here, Martin managed, but it sounded stupid and false. The boy laughed in agreement and shook his head. The sun was moving outside the window, making the shadows in the room dance. I don't want any help, unless it leads to a hastier demise. I'm sick of people demanding to know what is wrong and how they can help. The more they ask, the more I withdraw. It really has nothing to do with them. Wouldn't you agree? I can't say, Martin said, but was unsure if he had spoken or just thought it. You're no stranger to a place like this, the boy said, and Martin's head snapped up, full of fear. You have that embarrassed, tongue-tied feeling because conversations like this make you uncomfortable. People who've never been here don't know the feeling, so they're strident and forthcoming, and their diagnosis on how to cure you and what you need most, but not you. What's your name? The boy ignored the question. You didn't try to commit suicide. You don't seem like that type. Someone you knew did it, and you were powerless to stop him. Your self-preservation took over. You saved yourself. Stop, Martin said, putting a hand out in warning and protection. The boy went on. He seemed to be closer now, but Martin never saw him take a step. It was you or him, and you decided to live. Who are you? Martin demanded, his voice cracking in fear and anger. Clouds were moving rapidly outside the window, plunging the room in and out of darkness like time-lapse photography. Both the boy and Martin took a step backwards, and it was like a strobe effect, slow motion. I have to go, Martin said. There was silence, and Martin thought he could hear the boy breathing in the empty space. The boy sighed, and the words he spoke were laden with sadness. There was nothing you could have done, Martin. It was that the boy's words were a light switch. The sun disappeared behind a cloud, and the room went dark, the boy melting into the blackness. Or was it Martin who slipped into the blackness? Later, he would not remember moving away from the door, stumbling down the hallway, and falling to the floor. That's